Hello, hello to my True Blue crew. I am so excited to be with you on National Sew Jelly Roll Day. And I have two fun blocks for you to make today that use jelly roll strips. So I've kind of taken a little bit of liberty in the definition of sew a jelly roll because while there are patterns that use the whole package of pre-cut strips, I don't sew that way. I buy yardage and then cut it up to the colors that I want to use. So I my block ideas do not strictly match a pre-made set of jelly roll strips. You can collect several of them to make these blocks, but if you have leftover strips, that's what we're going to do. And it's all quilting and it's all fun. So we will just dive in. I did have a request to start with the bricks block, and this is a fun, scrappy block that I saw on the a fellow quilter on YouTube, Conquering Mount Scrapmore. And Brenda is so much fun and she does wonderful scrappy quilts. And she calls this a potato chip block because they're so much fun and addictive. You can't make just one. So I really enjoyed that. And this, you can see my scrappy version. I tend to make quilts like this in patriotic colors so that they're, I know there's the Quilts of Valor Foundation, there's some other charities that support our military families, and so that's an easy resource to donate to. If you made them all wonderful colors or novelty prints, they could go to Project Linus for children's charities. That's a nationwide organization. So I always like to have an outlet for my scrappy quilts. And those are just two options. I did prepare a cutting guide for these blocks, and it is a paid download on my website. So I'm going to grab that link and drop it below if you would like to follow along and get these two block cutting instructions and quilt layouts. There's no piecing instructions. That's what we're going to do today. But once you see the picture, you can pretty much figure it out based on the unit sizes that I give you in the pattern. So I'm going to drop that link. And this one is really easy with 2.5 by 4.5 inch units. So grab your jelly rolls, get your lights and darks ready to go. And I spent a couple hours last night and I was cutting my little bricks. I'm calling these bricks, 2.5 by 4.5. And I've got a selection of reds there and blues. So let's dissect this block for a minute before we get started sewing. It's a round robin type block. So we start with a center section that has two bricks, and those two bricks are sewn on the long end. That's the only long end seam that you have in this whole block. Everything else is sewn on the short ends of your bricks. So keep that in mind. So we have our center section, and then we change to our contrast color. So I'm using light and dark. So I'm doing dark in the middle, and then I'm doing a light round. And this light round has one brick on either end and two bricks top and bottom. So you start with singles, then 1 and 2, and then here you can see we move to 2 and 3. So pretty easy to keep that pattern in mind, that you start with 2, put 1 on each end, connect 2, put 2 on the ends, connect 3. So that is what we are starting with. And the block layout that I suggested is making alternates. I love playing with positive and negative, changing the look of your block by switching where the lights and darks are. So this is our dark block that has dark bricks in the center and the outer ring and just one contrasting ring of light. And we're going to make an alternate version that starts with a light in the center and has a dark accent and ends with a light. So we're going to end up with 2 blocks, and it takes 18 bricks to make 2 blocks. So you have 12 of one and 6 of your contrast. So if you want to do the math and figure out how that's all going to work, I will leave that to you. But I've done some of the math for the cutting, and the number of bricks you get out of one strip and all that stuff is in the pattern download, the Jelly Roll Ideas quilt layout sheet for you. And Linda, I'm so glad you are finding some value in these ideas to use up your leftover strips. I've got a whole bucket of Jelly Roll strip leftovers, and I tend to make a lot of patterns that use 2-inch units. You can see the checkerboard sampler that I did over my shoulder, and I love playing with 2.5-inch strips. So if I have fabric left over, I will typically cut it into those 2.5-inch strips and save it for later. And then I get these wild ideas like, let's sew brick blocks on Jelly Roll Day. So let's get sewing. I also like to chain piece, so I have a couple blocks going at a time, and having this pair of darks and lights makes it easy. So let me angle the camera over here a little bit so you can see what I am doing. And as you come in, hi Candace, say hello in the chat. Let me know your favorite Jelly Roll patterns and what you are working on today. So as I said, I spent some time cutting my strips. I've got a variety of neutrals here. I've got my reds and my blues. And then I made a stack of multicolor. Like I said, these are patriotic prints, but I'm keeping things that are more red, just pure red and blue, separate from these that are all multicolor. We'll see how much I mix and match as we go. But I want to do a block that has a red and blue center, and then I want to do a block that has the neutral center to be that opposite pair. So remember, we start by sewing our long end of our bricks. And then since we're chain piecing, I know I'm going to need those 2s from my contrasting color. So I am going to take a red and a blue, and this time I'm sewing on the short end for those pairs. And I need one for the top. And then I need one for the bottom. And the thing with my scrappy blocks, you get chunks of one fabric, obviously, when you're cutting things, and then I like to just dig around in my scrap stack so that I'm quote random, even though we know that in a true random selection you could end up with 2 of the same fabrics touching, but I don't like to do that when I am quilting. So I have those, and I had started before I turned on the camera. I started the one that has 2 lights, and then I just sewed another 2 lights together. So I need to do another pair that has these multicolors. So let me grab those, and we'll do another set so that I have an even number of blocks going at the same time. And this is one of those projects that if you are super organized and get all your cutting and blocks planned, you can go through and sew, your centers all at once. I don't tend to sew that way. I tend to sew just 1 or 2 blocks at a time. Um, it might be my impatience that I want to get to the finished project, and that way if I finish at least 1 or 2 blocks, then I feel like I'm making progress. Whereas if I sewed all 20 of step 1 before I went to step 2, then it feels like it drags the process out too long. And add to that the fact that I do most of my sewing for tutorials like this, and I don't tend to make all the blocks for one quilt at a time. So, which then leads into the other problem of having a huge pile of unfinished quilts, but we are working on that. So I've got my center done here, and we will get our other centers there. I've got another center of lights, and I've got one of my multicolors. Especially when I am on video, I don't iron. I don't take things to the pressing table just because moving around in the space gets a little bit difficult and heats up the room, all sorts of excuses. Plus, I'm lazy. So I do a lot of finger pressing, and then I press the finished block. And the great thing about these bricks that are all the same size is that you know when you have hit that good 1/4 inch seam because everything lines up perfectly with that finger pressing. So I don't worry too much about what the size of those intermediate steps needs to be because the finished product is going to work out to be the right size. Okay, and then we are doing our darker ends around the light center. I did those. And then I have my multicolor center. And you kind of have to plan a step ahead and be sewing some of these pairs on the short end so that you're ready for that next long strip across your block. And that's where it would help to have all your numbers of units planned out. But I just thought of these blocks that I wanted to work on, and didn't have time this week to write up the full pattern. So that is coming soon. And if you sign up for my newsletter, you get on my website, truebluequilts.com, you get a coupon code that's good forever. So every single purchase, you can buy patterns at a discount with that coupon code. So go help me out and sign up for my newsletter there. I was trying to do some grouping of colors last night. I don't know how successful I was to plan for sewing blocks together. That's one suggestion when you don't have a lot of time to quilt. If you spend some time when you do have a couple hours to cut and kit your own quilt projects. Put them all in a bag or a plastic box or an old shoebox or something. And then when you do have those 15, 20 minutes of downtime, you can grab your kit and start sewing right away. So that is a little time-saving trick. So I've got 3 or 4, I think I made 4 different blocks here that I'm trying to chain piece and remember which step I'm on. I wish I could see all your pretty fabrics. I've been showing you my patriotics here. So let me know what color schemes your favorite jelly rolls are in, so I can live vicariously through your pretty fabrics. I've got a lot of batiks in my collection because I was a brand ambassador for Island Batiks for a couple years. So they sent me a lot of fabric and I made a lot of quilts and shared them and promoted their new collections. And you can see some of those videos on my channel if you're curious about what that whole experience was like. Okay, now I'm getting all out of whack because I made my 2 pairs. Okay, we'll go back to this block at the beginning that I was ready. Oh, I should have done a blue, but I kept that with a red. I suppose well, then I start having all these crazy design ideas. I was like, oh, I could do a red round and then a blue round, but I've already got my red and blue all set there. So we will just, that's the beauty of Scrappy, is that it doesn't look, you know, when you make them, what you consider a mistake because you didn't follow your own plan that you had in mind, no one's ever going to know what the original plan was. And those quirky differences just make it all the more interesting and fun. As you can see, I was trying to alternate my reds and my blues. So I did okay, but then I got stuck and my red and blue, or my reds were touching and then I had 2 blues touching. So I needed to swap that. I thought my colors should be opposite, but with an even number of bricks around the side, I should have turned that one to keep the alternating red and blue going. So as long as it doesn't, you know, it won't look too planned because, oops, that one was different. Candace is working on Halloween. Oh, that's fun. There are some really cute Halloween fabrics out right now. And so while I was getting ready, you can see my anti-ironing philosophy showing up here with all these scraggledy block or fabrics. And there was a post on social media where a quilter was showing her organization for her jelly roll strips, and she has them, she obviously has a a stronger OCD tendency and wants to be very organized and be perhaps more time than I do. But she has all of her strips pressed and pinned in groups by color and hung up on hangers. So if you would like to be super organized with your strips, you can put them on hangers. Um, the a shoe caddy would probably work if you rolled things nicely and put them in the different pockets. So many fun organization ideas. Me, I throw them in a bucket and worry about getting all the wrinkles out later. So, for a person that doesn't like to iron, perhaps I should be a little tidier with my fabrics when they go in the scrap bin, but all part of the process. And then with my chain piecing, I just grab whatever unit comes next and whatever step I'm on for that next piece will go in the pile. I've got my dark centers, so I need to add my light pairs on that one. And like I said, since these were all cut to size, I don't really have to trim those middle steps. Everything, my machine is set. I've got my 1/4-inch foot going, so everything is lining up beautifully. I'm going to give myself a gold star for my seam allowance today. We need to celebrate every accomplishment, right? Okay, so then we have a light center with the patriotic bricks on the end, and I'm going to add my reds and blues there. This one didn't quite match up. Maybe I was rushing there or didn't trim that. So what I do when things don't line up, I just fudge the difference, make sure I have about the same distance on either end for that scant seam allowance. So when you are trying to improve your accuracy as a quilter, you need to think about your cutting and your piecing accuracy. So make sure you understand how to cut, where to place the ruler to get those accurate measurements. Use tools like the AccuQuilt, if that helps. The True Cut ruler and rotary cutter from the Grace Company are great tools for if your ruler wobbles and you need some more security. I just saw that So Tights is coming out with magnets on their rulers that will help. So lots of great options. And I want to say hello to the quilters that have joined us. We've got people from Oklahoma and Colorado. Great to have you here. Thank you so much. We are working on our bricks for this first little bit of sewing jelly rolls. And as I explained at the very, very beginning of the live stream, I do not purchase the prepackaged sets of strips. I make my own. So whatever leftover fabric I have from other projects, I love a good scrappy quilt. So the more the better. I do control my scrappiness though. I think I plan a color scheme and then I try to stay within that color scheme. So obviously we're doing patriotics today for my bricks. And these are 2.5 by 4.5 inch bricks units for our block. Every single piece in this quilt block is the same size. We start with singles, then we have a round that has a 1 and 2, and then our final round has 2 and 3. So you can start assembling your units, and I'm just working around my block. I had my 2 light colors there, and I just need to add one more red and blue. And this is where my planning went awry, because I put 2 reds on this round. My colors aren't alternating, and then I would end up with 2 of the same fabric. So I'm just going to turn that around and make it so my similar fabrics don't touch. Okay, I am ready for, excuse me, tickle. And then I lost some pieces. I'm ready for my second strip, but I don't have any of those pairs sewn together. So I need to work on my little strips. So, and I'm also digging in my stack of fabrics so I don't end up with the same 2 fabrics paired together all the time. So when you cut a bunch of the same fabric, then you have to mix it in your piles so that you can keep that illusion of randomness going. And I use a lot of tone on tone. You can barely see those circles. So I have a pair of dark pants on, and I set the fabric against that dark background, and that helps me see which is the right side of those tone on tone fabrics. So that's my tip. Although you can see all the threads on those dark pants, very helpful when you're sewing with tone on tone light colors. Unless you don't care about occasionally getting the wrong side of the fabric showing. As Bonnie Hunter says, you've paid for both sides of the fabric, you're free to use them. Some other people commenting in the chat, thank you so much. I love having this be an interactive session. I get tired of the sound of my own voice. Janice is in Iowa, and I thank you for being a regular viewer. I love being part of the quilting community, and it's so fun to see people across the country. And we have another visitor another quilter from Colorado. Janice, you and Debbie need to discuss those Iowa connections. My mother's family was from Iowa, and she moved to, I think she was born in Iowa and then moved to Minneapolis, like immediately, and then moved to California. So Midwest roots for my family tree. Oh, I was been trying to do these red and blue, keep the mix going. So we had one quilter working on Halloween. Everybody else needs to let me know what colors you're working on, if you're following along with my bricks or making a different pattern. Here is a completed first round. So then I need to add my lights to that. Once we get sewing, there isn't a lot of explanation to go with everything. So we can just stitch away. The only downside to working with scraps is they tend to pick up a lot of extra threads, and the whole process becomes a little bit messier. So tell me what the rest of your family is doing while you are sewing for our Jelly Roll Day celebration. My daughter is out with friends. She's a senior in high school, and so we don't see much of her on the weekends. And she's busy with school and work and her friends, and that's great. My husband's tackling a big sprinkler leak, so he's out. He found the source of the leaky pipe, and he's doing some repairs. So I will have to make his afternoon relaxing. For it's nice to have a handyman that can take care of those things for me. I'm very lucky. Carol from South Carolina asks about a pattern. I have a guide to the blocks. It's not a strict pattern. It gives you the number of units to cut, and then it gives you a layout. So if you can interpret things from the diagram, it's available. I'm going to drop another link in the chat. You can visit my website, truebluequilts.com, and just up in the search bar, type Jelly Roll, and it'll take you right there. It is a paid download. There's 2 block diagrams and quilt layouts, so I think you get a pretty good deal. And I will be updating that to include more specific instructions. I just couldn't get that all done. I have these crazy ideas, and then they always happen with a quick turnaround, that I have the idea on Monday for an event on Friday. It's hard to pull all the pieces together. Let me just catch up on some of these comments in chat. But Jay Murphy is doing her own jelly roll. I totally approve of that. I cut my own 2.5-inch strips. It gives you a lot more control over the colors. I find that when I get the pre-packaged jelly rolls, the official jelly rolls from the store that are one entire line of fabric, I don't quite have the right mix of lights and darks to make the quilt blocks that I enjoy. So yes, I totally approve of the DIY jelly rolls. And in fact, I have a video all about some different tools that you can use to cut your own jelly rolls. And Jay is working on a rail fence quilt. Kathy is making strippy stairways. Sounds like a fun pattern from GE Quilt Designs. And she got her jelly roll from French General. I bet it's gorgeous. Tell us the colors. Catherine is taking advantage of a quiet house, it sounds like, while her husband is out, but she's working on Christmas. So we have Halloween and Christmas covered. Sounds good. And Candace is in Georgia. Oh, goodness. Oh, and you've got a quiet household too. So all the tips on empty nest as my daughter plans to go away for college next year. She's laughing about it. It's kind of a joke between us that I'm just going to be an emotional wreck and crying all the time. And I did tear up on her last first day of school. So yeah, I send me the Kleenex because it's coming. I am working on these patriotic bricks patterns. Julie, thank you for dropping your first name. Sometimes it's tricky with these social media handles, nicknames that we all use. I'm Andy, by the way, ANDI from True Blue Quilts, if we haven't said that. Yes, Julie recommends the June Taylor strip cutting ruler. Those Stripology rulers are very, very handy for making strip sets. And yeah, I did all my cutting at a open sew group last night, so I did have the chatter in the background that made the cutting go fast. My back is really tired today from standing up at the cutting table for 2 hours straight. Sorry, husband had to let me know about his errands for the sprinkler repair job. Okay, back to sewing. I am adding light strips because I like to alternate my blocks and make positive and negative versions. And that just refers to switching the light and dark placement of the fabrics. I have this one, but I don't have fabrics ready for that. I'm digging through my stacks to find fabrics I haven't used yet. Not that it matters, they'll all get used eventually, so I should speed it up and just grab the next one in the pile. Oops. Okay, I better get sewing on those light fabrics because I'm ready for the final round of these two versions. So you can see I started here with a pair. So I need 1, 2, 3, 4 pairs. So we've mentioned the Stripology ruler, AccuQuilt. I have an AccuQuilt. I get lazy and don't use it as much as I should to get these strip sets ready. So those are great cutting options. I totally lost my train of thought. Oh, I know what I was going to say. I use EQ8 software. Where is my brain these days? To EQ8 software to design my quilts and write my patterns. So if you are a quilter, an experienced enough quilter that you can sew from a diagram, I highly recommend designing your own stuff with EQ8. You can take a block idea, you know, whether it's a rail fence or a classic star block, a pinwheel, and just have fun playing with that. EQ8 comes with a library of pre-designed blocks, and it also has like graph paper that you can design your own. So I really have fun playing with that. And then you can change the colors just with the click of a button, because it has a swap color feature, so that you pick the new color, and then let's say I wanted to, instead of my patriotic, if I wanted to use a pastel, I could replace all the blues with a light green just by clicking the button. So that's a lot of fun. Okay, I think I have the units I need of my lights, so I can start sewing those. And when I'm finger pressing, for now that I'm talking about it, I'm going across the whole row, but sometimes you only need to finger press just those little edges where you need a seam allowance. I was at a retreat early in my quilting life with Jackie Robinson. She was an award-winning quilter back in the early 2000s, and she does not press in between steps of making quilt blocks. She finger presses while she's sewing, and then she only presses the final block. And her rationale for that is that the less you are handling, obviously finger pressing, you're handling the fabric quite a bit, but you can distort things quite a bit with an iron, especially a heavy steam iron. And that's why she thinks finger pressing is a little more gentle and maintains the accuracy of your final block. Don't know how much everybody's hyper vigilant about accuracy. I just find it quick and easy, and I don't do much in terms of hair and nails, but my nails do stay at a length where it's not too painful to do that finger pressing. And they do have the roller tools and the different gadgets you can buy to help you with to help do that finger pressing. I was trying to think of fancy words, and there's just not fancy words in my brain right now. So, like I said, I love show and tell, and it's very hard for me on these live broadcasts to be showing you all of my work, and I don't get to see any of your work. So please use the hashtag True Blue Quilts or at True Blue Quilts if you're putting your work on Instagram, or send me pictures on email. Easy and fun way to stay connected. info@truebluequilts.com, and there's links to everything in the video description. So I love to hear from my quilting friends. That way it's not such an anonymous one-way conversation. Okay, this one is my multicolor block, so I'm grabbing 2 of my wild red, white, and blue fabrics. And as I said with this block that we're making just from our 2x4 bricks, the only long seam you do with the rectangles is for that center unit. Everything else, when we're sewing pairs and groups of 3 together, is done on that short end. So save yourself some unpicking there and work on that. Let's see, where am I? Where did I end up with this whole exercise? Okay, so I am ready for my group of 3 on that one. So I better get sewing my lights together. I dug pretty far into that group. So let's mix it up a bit with these other. That's the problem with having the desire for an extremely scrappy quilt, but not having an extremely scrappy set of fabrics. I've only got 4 or 5 fabrics, and when you need, 12, 9 or 8 or 9 units around a circle, it gets kind of repetitive. But that's okay. Finger pressing before I add the next round. Okay, so my goal is to finish this set of the bricks, and then I'm going to move to my star blocks and show you that second pattern. Like I said, in the quilt layout file that you can download from truebluequilts.com, I give you both quilt blocks, cutting instructions, and layouts. So I want to make sure I demonstrate that other block as well. Trying to plan ahead for that other round that I need. Takes quite a bit to get these going when you don't have things planned out. So I'm making a lot of decisions on the fly here, whereas if I had my numbers planned out, I could just flow from one to the other a little more easily. Okay, Julie, catching up on chat, was cutting her 2 jelly rolls last week. Yes, I can sympathize. Um, but I'm glad you are enjoying that quality time of a quiet house and your sewing machine. Sounds like a lovely afternoon. And Mama Hardin's from North Carolina. Oh, I'm sorry to hear of your surgery. Hope you start feeling better soon. Yeah, I had back surgery a couple years ago and I was on the couch for about 2 weeks, not doing much. But glad you can be with us for a little bit, and hopefully it fixed the issue and you have no more problems. Here we are making progress with our multicolor blocks, and I just need to get these last ones done with 3 bricks to go across the top and bottom and finish out our patriotic blocks. So those went with that one. I think we're ready to go on some of these with our last round. I just pause and make sure my seams are all laying flat. The nice thing about this block with bricks, and now my machine is gonna tell me I'm almost out of bobbin, and it doesn't let you sew. This baby lock doesn't let you sew much more than 3 or 4 stitches after it gives you the bobbin warning. So I always that's my main complaint. It's like I know there's enough bobbin thread left there to finish this seam, but I don't want to deal with the alarm going off every 10 seconds. So I will comply with the machine's directives and put a new bobbin in. I keep a little bobbin saver with a bunch of bobbins that I have wound ahead of time. I do have a set of pre-wounds that I've been using recently that I purchased from the store, a whole package of pre-wounds. But they're in my travel bag, so we'll just go with this. Okay, we got that one on there, and that strips for the next one. So we have a shop hop coming up in our area next month. That will be a lot of fun. And I always like to have a quilt or theme in mind when I go shopping on those kind of things, because I've got a room full of fabric. It's not like I have to purchase anything. So I like to be intentional, obviously, especially these days with a daughter going off to college. I need to be strategic about my spending. So I'm intrigued by, but I balance that, you know, my budget constraints with the desire to support the shops. And if we aren't purchasing items, if we're only looking for the sales and the special deals, eventually those shops are going to have to go out of business. And I don't want to see that because I love the fabric too much. So yes, Julie, the alarm takes the fun out of bobbin chicken completely. I am much more of a daredevil than the machine lets me be. But back to the shop hop. So I've got some ideas about, you know, I've got a pattern that I purchased that I need, that I would like to buy new fabric for. So it'll take some time to look at the pattern, figure out what I have. You know, I'd like to use my stash as much as possible. So that's going to be a dedicated evening of sorting those fabrics. And then, have you made the 3-yard quilts by Fabric Cafe? I just thought that would be a fun way to plan my shop hop, is to buy a different Fabric Cafe 3-yard book at a couple of the shops and then pick bundles, 3-yard bundles, because the way that those patterns are written, you need 3 fabrics, so 1 yard of each, and that will be a good way to support the different shops and get, you know, not just buy fabric with no plan, because as I said, with all the scrap fabric that I have, I really need to be buying fabric for specific projects and not just accumulating more pretty things. Candace, same boat. My daughter does not have a big interest in sewing at the moment. She did go to a kids quilt camp and she made a quilt from start to finish, all her own. And she's artistic enough that I think she enjoys planning the colors and the designs, but she hasn't really asked to sit down and sew at the machine. My niece, however, she was staying. My mom lives here, so we get to see the cousins quite a bit because they can come down here and see cousins and grandma all at the same time. And my niece was doing some sewing with her grandma. She was crocheting, and it's fun to see that next generation pick up the craft as well. So we'll see if she ever comes to it in the future. I mean, there's no shortage of quilts because both her, we've got 2 generations already, so the family is well stocked in quilts. And I was doing so well with my seams, and then I get to this last one and I've got quite a bit on both ends. So you know what, that's one of those instances where we're just gonna chop it off at the end. Life's too short to stress about an 1/8 of an inch. Now, if you're doing things wrong and consistently you're a 1/2 an inch off, and yes, I know those 1/8 inch problems add up over a whole quilt, but I said I was using maybe I'll switch. I was using my flat, a different foot. Here's the true 1/4 inch foot with that bar on the edge. And I had been sewing with the more traditional foot, and there is a mark for the 1/4 inch, but it without the bar on the edge, just having that groove, I don't always line up exactly right. So let's see how my accuracy changes with this with the official 1/4 inch seam. Okay, so I do have one block finished now. Totally scrappy, patriotic. This is the bricks. All of these are 2.5 by 4.5. And this will finish at a 12-inch block. So that's the dark version with the colors on the outside. And then I'm also making a light version. So let me get those last borders on. And then we will be well on our way to that Jelly Roll Bricks quilt. Now we're going to play this game. This machine also likes to randomly stop. And I don't know if it's because it senses some lint or some dust gets in between the, the lens or the sensor, whatever, for the machine, and just has it stop. But in the middle of a seam, if I've been sewing for a while, it'll just need to take a 30-second pause. So as I was saying, since you're not matching any seams on this quilt, your pressing is, I press each round out as I go, and then there's no seams to match. So you can just line up those fabrics and go to town. It is fun almost mindless sewing. You can focus on the more creative parts of just putting your colors together. Oops. And I need to stop and make sure my seam doesn't get flipped. Those two, where are we? This one needs colors, colors, colors. I'm going towards the bottom of the stack to get some fabrics that I haven't used yet. Okay. Doing well. And I was saying you don't have to match seams, and I put that on a side that had a seam. So all you have to do is just turn that, and then you don't have to worry about matching seams. It's your quilt, you make the rules. Check for family messages. Okay, putting the last row on these blocks that had the light on the outside. How did I do? Ooh, that one matched up. You know, you've got to praise yourself when you do a good job. Those edges matched up exactly. Good job, Andy. Oh, Denise, thank you. She noticed my shirt. It's got this fun 8-point star. And this actually is a block that I use in my pattern, My Favorite Stars. So it's very appropriate. I buy my quilt t-shirts from Maker Valley, and she's just got a lot of fun designs. So check those out. In case you weren't aware, I also host a podcast, and it's called Quilting on the Side. And we've made a few t-shirts to support the podcast. So I'll wear one of those on an upcoming video and talk more about that. But a friend of mine and I decided to just have some conversations about the business aspects of quilting. If you're interested in taking your hobby into that realm of the business world and the kind of the ups and downs of entrepreneurship. And so give it a listen if you need something different. It's Quilting on the Side if you want to listen on your regular podcast platform. But the YouTube channel for the podcast is QS Podcast. So you can find us there and hear a little bit more about the business side of being a pattern designer and in the quilt world. We've done some interviews with other quilters, so that's a lot of fun. Yes, projects with no matching seams. Denise was commenting that those are very meditative and enjoyable projects. Okay, getting this last light colored strip on this block. Another great seam strip that lines up. Question for the group. Do you go on quilt retreats? Do you ever go away from home with a group of quilters and have a mini camp? Let me know your favorite activities. Do you like to take your own projects? Do you like to work on a group project? Do you go to take a class at your quilt retreats? I'm curious. Another quilter I follow, I See Stars, here on YouTube, just had a retreat in Hamilton, Missouri, home of Missouri Star Quilt Company. Apparently they have a retreat center. So I've heard some reviews. It sounded like a fabulous week. Maybe someday when I'm not working full time and can devote all of my attention to a quilt business, I could host a retreat. So that would be a lot of fun. Okay, here's the first neutral block with the light center and the light ring on the outside. And two more. We're getting towards the end here of this session. It always takes longer than I think to put blocks together, but then again, I chatter a lot. So, oh my. That doesn't really work as a 2.5 inch strip. So we will toss that one into the other craft. Did I really think I could fudge that? Oh, Andy. I get overly optimistic sometimes. That one is a true 2.5. The other nice thing about these scrappy blocks where seams don't match is you can turn your strips around so that the seam is down and you don't have to worry about it flipping underneath the needle. It's the little pleasures in life that . that help out. I was saying how I am a fairly lazy quilter and don't get up to iron. I have my eye on those little craft irons. Aliso obviously has a version, and gosh, they are so cute. Anytime you miniaturize things, they just get so adorable. Here's another light block finished. Okay, so I'm finishing up that block and I need a leader ender, but I don't want to start on my next block. So I just grab my little tab that I run under my needle so that I can keep chain piecing, have that leader ender thing going. Did I get, no, and I needed to make another three unit here. I could have done that. And my kitty decided to come visit. She does this on the live streams occasionally. And I did. I thought I was safe because it was a batik, but I sewed back to front. So I found my seam ripper. If you've been on live streams before where I didn't have my seam ripper because it had traveled to in one of my project bags, I found it this week. So I now have a dedicated seam ripper in my sewing kit, my little pouch that I take to classes. I have a seam ripper out at my long arm, and now I have my good Clover seam ripper that came back to my sewing room. What do you need, kitty? Come on. Come on. Yeah, come on. Well, you have to get up here. Come on. There we go. This is Harley. She doesn't spend a lot of time in the sewing room. I keep the door closed because I don't want black cat hair over all my fabric. Yeah, Denise, I need to find one of those wooden seam rollers. I've been looking, I can't find them in my local shops, so I just haven't taken the time to order online. But yes, that's definitely on my list as a quilt purchase. But as I was saying, I don't let the cats hang out in my sewing room when I'm not here, but she likes to come get some cuddles occasionally before she settles down for her daytime nap. Huh. And she's a very large cat, so she doesn't fit on my lap very well. Yes, but we don't talk about ladies' weight, do we? No. She's just purring away here. The other cats we've had have tended to be very aloof and they don't like to cuddle much, but she definitely comes up for these snuggles, so that's nice. Let's see if I can press her foot with her on my lap. Quite a trick. And somehow everything got tangled up around my presser foot. What are we doing here? Oh, we haven't had enough petting, huh? Well, I'm kind of busy. Yeah, so you need to go. Okay, furry friends, who else has cats, dogs, fish, turtles, birds? This one didn't quite match up as nicely as the previous one. So my streak is over. Let's see how we doing in the chat. Jay does a strip rag quilt. Is that the kind where you snip all the edges? I just think that would be exhausting on your hands to have to go and clip all the edges. I love the finished effect, but again, I live in Phoenix, so I tend to think of rag quilts as the really heavy flannel, and I just don't need that much extra warmth here. Mary's cat sits in the box while she's paying bills. Do you have a tray for your mail? Yeah, I have another cat that likes to sit on paper or books, or so anything you have on the table, she would definitely be on top of that. And Jay has not been to a retreat. Linda has 3 very helpful cats. Yes. Sometimes we don't need the feline assistance as much as they think they're the experts at everything. Okay, so I have one more bit on that one. So let's. Okay, I am getting ready to sew the final seam on this block, and then we're going to switch projects. The Jelly Roll Ideas file download that I have on my website, it is a very low cost, but it is a paid pattern guideline that I've linked in the chat. I hesitate to call it a pattern because it doesn't have specific sewing instructions step by step. It just gives you the fabric requirements and cutting instructions, and then it gives you a diagram of the quilt. So if you can follow along, and now that you've seen me sew bits together, hopefully that block layout makes sense, and you can find that at truebluequilts.com. But we're getting ready to switch to our second block. We've made the bricks. I'm going to sew my last seam here now that I got my fabrics all right sides facing the right way, and let's finger press the seams there on both ends so that we can get this last seam in place. And I'm going to turn it around. Like I said, I want the seams going down as they go under the needle, and I'm back to my accurate seam so that different foot is helping keep those. It's that bar, the metal bar that guides my fabric. Even though I have marks on my machine bed, it's hard to stay aligned with those all the time, but having that metal bar to push your fabric up against really helps keep that perfect 1/4 inch. Okay, so the bricks are done for today, for the moment. And so we will have a quick show and tell. As I said, the quilt I'm imagining will have alternating darks and lights and be really scrappy. So there is a pair, and here is another pair of jelly roll bricks. So you can just slice up your jelly rolls and I've alternated the light and the dark. And so this block is made entirely from 2.5 by 4.5 inch bricks. So have fun. I can't wait to see your pictures. Denise Quilts by Picture. Yeah, if you've been quilting for a while, you understand how the pieces go together, and you work from the center out. The smallest component turns into a bigger component. So hopefully that works. And I promise I will write up a full pattern and offer that to people that need a little more instruction but like the look of that block. So I've got my 4 brick blocks put together. So we're going to put that project aside. Project bags are some of my favorite things right now. I'm working out of the 2-gallon plastic bags that you can get at the grocery store. Those make fabulous project bags just to keep everything, organized. Here was the sample that I started with, because I spent a lot of time cutting, so I've got a ways to go here to get through these scraps. These are my DIY jelly roll strips. I cut my own 2.5 inch strips so I can keep it in this patriotic color scheme. And I will have to, you may see these show up on our regular sew-in chat Saturdays on the first Saturday of the month, because I need to have dedicated sewing time to finish these blocks up and get this quilt to a finished stage. It's really nice to, and I love to sew a variety of blocks, but at some point I need to stop the orphan block syndrome. So here's my brick collection that I'm going to set aside, because the second block that you can make from jelly rolls is a star. And it's a similar concept to this star, but we've just put some strips in the center. And so this is called a 4X star. And I have a full video tutorial for this on the channel. So search True Blue Quilts for 4X star and you will find a slight variation of this. I decided for the jelly rolls to use a strip. So the cutting instructions for all of this are a little more intense, and they're all specified in the pattern that I linked in the chat. That's also in the video description. So this is all cut from jelly roll strips. Now, some people may have, you may prefer to do your half square triangles from larger units. 2 at a time method does not work with jelly roll strips. Obviously, your half square triangles would turn out much too small. But you can see we've got some plain squares here for our stars. We've got some plain squares from our background. I did an alternate fabric single square, and then I'm using those 2x4 bricks again in my purple. So the color scheme I'm using for these blocks is our kind of teal bluish green for the stars, and then a neutral background. I've mixed it up. I've got, this block was white, but I do have some gray, some light blue, some tan mixed in, because I did cut for all blocks for this quilt. So my bricks is about halfway, but I've done all the cutting for these blocks. So again, I'll show you the half square triangles, and then I make these star point quadrants, and then I sew my rows together, because it's just a basic 9 patch 3x3 rows. Okay, so If you've got half square triangles, 2.5 inch half square triangles, you're ready to go. We make our quadrant like that, and these are pretty wild batiks, so the contrast isn't great for showing you, but hopefully it comes across on the computer screen that you can see those are half square triangles, one star point fabric, one background fabric. That makes your quadrant. And then you sew those together with a brick in the middle. You get your strip that has 2 bricks and a square and your other 2 quadrants, and that will make a, if I get my fabrics all, my Vanna white skills are lacking at the moment, then we can put our three rows together, and I'm fumbling all over the place. So how do we make half square triangles from jelly roll strips? Because I love jelly roll strips and I love half square triangles, I had to get the easy angle ruler. Okay. And this says you can find it at www.simplicity.com. I also found it at most local quilt stores, the easy angle ruler. And I think Bonnie Hunter has come up with her own version, so that's another source. But I love this because you can see you can make it half square triangles with any size strip. And that's what these rulers are designed for, are cutting half square triangles from strips. So I have my 2.5 inch strips. Take both colors that you need. Like I said, I've already cut all my half square triangles, so I can't demo that specifically, but I'll give you an idea. You have your 2 fabrics, right sides together, and then you just line them up. I'm going to find the 2.5 inch line, and then I'm going to cut on the diagonal. And then I'm just going to flip my ruler and line it up on the diagonal, and the 2.5 line will be at the top. And then I cut on the straight edge, and then I flip it back down, cut on the diagonal, flip it up, cut straight. And I love this ruler because it works with my pre-cut strips, and I'm all ready to go. So that's your quick and dirty tutorial for half square triangles. Like I said, I've cut ahead, so I have my half square triangles all pieced and trimmed. And as I said, I use my 2-gallon Ziploc type bag. I've got all my pieces cut there. So let's try to make sense of this mess, because I cut the squares as I was cutting the half square triangle. So now I have to match up the fabrics with the different piles that I have. So let me see if I can work those out. Yes, I have that one first. And here's what I mean. This is the unit that I got when I paired my fabrics right sides together. So I'm ready to chain piece all of these half square triangles. But I had sewn some of them and trimmed them already. So that's what I'm going to work with today. And let me get my little teacher mode going. I'm going to put a half square triangle together, and you make those kiss for your 4-patch, and then you put the star fabric touching the stars and the background fabric in the opposite corner, and there we have a star point ready to sew. Okay, Jenny, nice to see you. Thanks for joining us. Another fan of the 2-gallon bag for storing your quilt projects. It just, when you can't spend all day, every day quilting, it's nice to be able to keep your project components and your fabrics all together. So that's what I'm doing. So I'm going to lay out my half square triangles and my fabrics so that I can sew some 4 patches here, and we'll do some more chain piecing for another little while. Unfortunately, I'm not going to live stream all day. This isn't a marathon session, but I do want to make a few of these 4X stars, from jelly roll stars, as we will call them today, and do some scrapping sewing, and then I will have to sign off and get some other work done this afternoon. So let me reset my star quadrants so that I know what I am doing. And of course, you need 8 half square triangles to make your 8 pointed star. And then you need 4 squares of the star fabric and 4 squares of the background fabric, and that will complete your star. So you're going to have 4 patches as we sew our stars together. Oh, thank you, Jenny. She says she loves the pretty scrappy block, and she complimented me saying I'm an amazing quilter and YouTuber. Well, I know there's a lot of other wonderful quilters out there, and that are many leagues in advance of me, much more expert. But I do have fun being here, and I thank you all for joining me for these sew and chat sessions, and letting me babble on. And I'm glad you're finding my instructions helpful. I've been a teacher in some form my entire life. I'm the kid that would line up the stuffed animals on the bed and have class. So I do consider myself just a teacher is my talent. So I'm glad you are finding the instructions helpful. But I do always tell people that there are many, many ways to do things. And so you do not have to follow my instructions completely. If you have found a better way from a different quilter, certainly go with what makes sense to you. So I like to lay out my blocks on, I have a rotating mat here next to my sewing machine, and I just lay out my 4 patch, and then I can pick up the pieces as I go. I am going to turn this background piece upside down because I always like to sew with my plain squares on the bottom. If I have a seam, I want that up so I can tell what it's doing. But I want everything to be in the right orientation. You know, we need that diagonal going across the star point the right way. So that's the beauty of a rotating mat. Just turn it and you've got your components ready to sew. And we can do a lot of chain piecing with these star blocks because we need 4 patches. And these blocks work out to be 10 inches. So I will add some sashing later, and that's shown in the quilt diagram that's linked at truebluequilts.com. But I haven't worked out the yardage for that yet. You know, sashing comes way later in the process. So I'm going to just work on making blocks today. So now I've got my pairs done and I can finger press to complete the star. Now, for patch stars, we do need to match up a seam. So I'm going to press to the plain fabric. When I say plain fabric, I mean the square that does not have a seam. So you can, these are small enough units, you know, you only are matching that one seam. You could probably pinch that and hold it as you're sewing without a pin. But anytime I am matching seams, I like to pin. So I just put my pin in. And my pins are completely on the fabric. That may be backwards. Some people may put the head of the pin off the fabric, but I like it to lay right on the fabric. That's just how my mom learned. That's how she taught me. And I make sure that I am laying on the stitches on the front and the back of my patch. The other benefit of keeping the head of the pin on your fabric is that it can stay in the fabric closer to the needle. Whereas especially with these 1/4 inch feet that have the bar, you're taking your pin out way ahead, like almost an inch ahead of the needle. And so there's still room for that seam to wiggle out of alignment. Just some things to consider as you are piecing. So I'm going to finger press those. I nest my seams so they're this nice little star point is perfectly designed to press and nest those intersections. Oops. Didn't want to feed and get started. Okay, so I'm chain piecing those and get this last one. It was kind of a challenge finding 20 different scraps of teal and background in my strip bin yesterday. I was scrambling to get some fabrics together. I'll go ahead and finish these 2 blocks. Let me dig back into my project bag because I cut a bunch of purples. I don't think I cut enough purples for all 20 blocks, but maybe I did. It was late last night when I was cutting these. We'll see what shade do I want, because I've got some darker purples and some lighter purples with this. So I'll just go ahead and make this one scrappy. have 4 different purples there. That might look a little odd with this block, but you know what? We'll just do it. And a bright yellow for the center. Now, since we nested our seams, we can spin our seams. Oh, Jenny has a lot of purple. I have plenty. I was working from my strip bin, my leftover 2.5-inch strips. I have a whole bin of purple fabric that I haven't cut into yet. So I think I can manage, but I appreciate your offer. That's so sweet. We're going to spin our seams. And that means that we're not going to just press this horizontal seam flat. I come to the back and I see that this seam is facing to that side. So I need this side to go up and this side to go down. So I'm just going to guide that in the center and I'm going to pop it open so that you end up with an opening there and your seams are going in opposite directions and they don't want to sit. It creates a little bit of bulk at the edges where those half square triangles are, but the center of that block is going to be nice and flat. So I'm just going to pop those seams open and finger press them again. Once I know which direction, which side needs to go, I can finger press that really easily. Have you guys, Jenny, you were saying you have a lot of purple fabric. Have you been on the Whatnot app? It's kind of like a virtual auction garage sale type eBay platform for live sales. And there are a growing number of crafters on the Whatnot app selling their supplies. I had a weekly show at the beginning of the summer. I was trying to get rid of some of my scrap bins and overflowing fabrics. But I got busy and haven't been able to have a show in a while. So I need to get back to that and reduce some of this excess. Whatnot is an app. So just search the App Store on your phone and it's a virtual marketplace. You can find all sorts of fabric and patterns and supplies, and like people are selling handbags and shoes and vintage clothes. I mean, like I said, it's this treasure trove of niche little sales opportunities. So a nice way to get lost in the rabbit hole if you're into that kind of thing. Okay, so I've got my 4 patches finger pressed. The seams have spun, and now I can just put my rows together. So we sew a star point to a purple. Then we sew a purple to a yellow so that that middle row has a yellow center. And then we sew another star point to purple. And I should be more generic because not everybody's going to have their purple accent stripes. And those are the 3 rows in our star. So I've got my other pieces that I used for demo. I should save those so I can take pictures. Okay, spinning my seam one last time so that gets nice and flat. Okay, and then since we're chain piecing, I need to get my units that I just sewed. Finger press, and now check your orientation, because you can't just blindly pick up your 4-patch and sew it. You have to make sure that it rotates to make your star point on the other side of that purple accent. And again, if you are sewing an accurate seam, those units will line up, even if you've just finger pressed them. And so I did that one. Some of my scraps have pinked edges, and the question always comes up, do you measure from the top of the hill or down at the valley? I measure from the top of the hill. I don't know if that's right or wrong, but it works. And you'll find that with the store-bought pre-cut strips. Some of them have that pinked edge. Yes, a mirror image. Yes, Jenny. Jenny does online shopping, so you'll have to tell us where the good deals are. I know Missouri Star does a deal of the day, and obviously they're promoting jelly rolls right now. Stitch in Heaven. Oh my gosh, I want to go to Texas and see Stitch in Heaven in person. Hancock's in Paducah, Kentucky, quilt metropolis there, destination. Shabby Fabrics. Yeah, I've heard of them too. Okay, so I've got 2 rows done. Here's my 3rd row. Again, I want to position it so it's a mirror image of that star point. Okay, and then our rows are together. I am going to find my next set of fabrics and lay out my next block. Excuse me a moment while I count and lay things out here on my workspace. This was a fun batik fabric. It almost looks like clouds there. It's hard to see the further away you get, but I love working with batiks because you can just pick them up and sew since they're the same on both sides. Some people say they can tell a difference, the right side and wrong side of a batik, but it's very minimal. Although I was working, I'll show you the fabric that was, I kept having to do double takes last night as I was cutting because with batiks, the variation in the fabrics can make you think there are flaws. Like this purple batik, there are like some bleach spots and then this darker, almost red rust look. That rusty spot was like right at the edge where I was cutting. I thought I had spilled something on it. Um, Judy, thank you. Julie, it was Julie Murphy. Thank you for joining us. She was is commenting that she's really enjoyed having a live day. I love sewing on live stream, even though, you know, I've been considering doing a Zoom session so that we could see each other. YouTube gets a little funky since I'm the only one on camera and talking, but I so appreciate all your comments and conversation. It helps pass the time, and gets us more solidified as the True Blue crew. Um, yeah, Denise, having those pinked edges on pre-cuts makes it hard to measure sometimes. So figure out where a good spot is and be consistent, and that's the best you can do. Oh my gosh, Jenny lives in Paducah. Yes, we need to we need to come visit. Everybody, we're meeting up at Jenny's house. Um, yeah, that would be fun. Um, and Muppin.com just opened a shop. I know Cheryl. I've met her a few times in person. So that's two people I know in Paducah now. Let me save my pennies, get my daughter off to college, and get that paid for, and then I'll come visit you in Paducah, Jenny. My mom went on a tour. What is it? Country Quilts Tours is one of the companies. I'm sure there are others that do quilt tours for Quilt Week in Paducah. Although we have grand retirement plans. We'll see how it works out. My mother-in-law is elderly and she lives close to us, so my husband's being pessimistic and thinking we won't be able to travel and be too far away from her here over the next 5 years or so. But I'm hoping we can just get away. But we have a little trailer that we fixed up as a camper. So I plan to pack my machine and sew on the road here at some point. That would be a lot of fun. Jenny, send me your email. We need to plan an event. info@truebluequilts.com if anyone wants to get in on this. We're going to invade Jenny's house. She's going to regret that she mentioned it on YouTube, that we could come to Paducah and celebrate. Oh dear. I might have. I'm looking at how I'm sewing my pieces together and making sure this last one goes together right. As I got ready to sew my next 4 patches together. That's the problem with chain piecing and working with different steps on different blocks, is that sometimes you can get lost. And then, of course, I was daydreaming about our quilt retreat at Jenny's house. Okay, so let me focus for a minute and get these 4 patches together. Yeah, I was thinking I could use gray as the background for these teal stars. And then as I searched through my bin, I do not have a wide variety of gray fabrics. So I expanded my neutral background. Some of these blocks have some creamy fabrics. Then I had to go with plain white. Let's see what my phone notifications are. Okay. Daughter has not checked in yet from her sleepover, so sometimes. Okay, I think she is. The other thing I love is called Life 360. In terms of keeping track of teenagers, of course, they have to opt in. And one of her friends said, the mom called me and said, "Oh, my daughter just turns the app off." And, well, that's a different issue you need to have with your teenager. But my daughter has accepted the oversight of her parents, and you can create circles in this. It's called Life 360. So if you have kids or grandkids that you need to keep track of, everybody joins the app and turns on their locator service. You have to allow the app to track your phone. And then you can just look at the app and see where they are. And she's really good. We're fairly permissive, and so she doesn't have too much need to go behind our back for anything. She's honest with us and tells us what she's doing, but I still like to verify that she is where she says she's going to be. And I just finger pressed that to the wrong direction to nest those seams. So let me redo that. Oh yeah, Jenny, I have the same thing. Sometimes when I'm meeting my mom for lunch, I wish she would have, because I'm always early, and so I want to know where, if they're on their way. But we have that in common. My daughter is adopted as well, so we could chat about the intricacies of navigating those adoptive relationships at some other point. We don't need to do that on our quilting day. But shout out to fellow adoptive moms. Okay, folks, Jenny sent me an email, so we are going to be planning a True Blue Crew invasion of Paducah, Kentucky. Party at Jenny's house. Okay, I am back to that first block. I had my rows sewn together, and now I am sewing. And if I had thought ahead, I would probably put the purple strip down so that I could watch the half square triangle seams, but I pinned it the other way. So we'll just go slow and make sure those seams behave when we get to them. And I'm alternating with another group of 4 patches here as I do my chain piecing and multiple blocks at different stages to make our jelly roll stars. want to get a couple of these blocks done before I have to sign off. These blocks are a little bit trickier because of those half square triangles. Sometimes your machine doesn't want to sew over those bulkier seams. So like I have to get started sewing right on that bulky part of that half square triangle seam. So it does help to raise your presser foot and get that fabric right up next to the needle when you start. And I'm not being great at this right now. Let me angle the camera a little more. Since I'm chain piecing, I can grab the previous fabric and help guide everything so that my needle picks up the fabric. If you're having trouble and you're finding that your half square triangles are not going under the needle very easily, just, you know, give it some guidance there. You're in charge. Make the fabric behave. Okay, quilt invasion of Paducah in 2024. What's a good time of year? Do we want to go during quilt week, or does the town get kind of crazy then? Jenny, you'll have to let us know, like if restaurants are too busy. And okay, so now I've got my other little 4 patches done. So I have to decide on a purple. I think I'll keep this one with the light purple. These aren't popping as smoothly as the other ones did. And of course the fabric wants to go away from the half square triangle. So you kind of, you're choosing which battle you want to fight. Do you want to put bulk there at the edge of the half square triangle, or keep it in the center of that 4 patch with your seams? But okay, so those are done. I was going to do, here are my, let me put that against the gray. You can see that's just kind of a nice soft light purple. Let me find, I have a kind of a soft yellow. What did I, all my yellows are pretty bold there. So we'll put it to a vote. Should I do the big open polka dots or the little polka dots with that soft purple? I know it's not coming across very well. That purple is reading almost gray on my computer. See, I think I like the open. 50-50. Denise likes the big dots and Jenny likes the little dots. I'm going to save those little dots since it's a brighter. I'm kind of going with a softer look on this cream and blue. So we'll go with that one. So yes, this jelly star block is a lot more intense than the bricks we were doing before. It's going quickly for me this morning because I've already spent the time sewing half square triangles. So I would definitely give yourself, do this in stages. Spend a day making half square triangles and getting those trimmed up, and then make your 4 patches, and then you can do your rows. Let's see, I've got this there. Where did my other, going towards the purple. And with this 9 patch, to get your rows to nest, you always want to press towards your bricks, whatever color it is. I'm going to always press to purple, because my middle row, when I press to purple, that actually means I'm pressing out. With my star points, I'm pressing in towards the purple. And I can nest those seams, and then we will have our first block done. Jenny, I'm already thinking of a t-shirt design for. Because it's going to be called the True Blue Crew Paducah Invasion. Okay, we don't have the reveal of that block yet because we're chain piecing, and I've still got other components to get ready of this second block. Okay, and I'm pressing towards the purple. I have to say it out loud so I remember. Oh, press to the purple. So this is a Frankenstein. I had to grab another piece just so that I could continue my chain piecing. And I had to Frankenstein this last scrap. Like I said, I was having trouble finding teals in my 2.5-inch strip bin. And I was one square short of this colorway. The strip didn't go as far as I thought it would. So I had to kind of Frankenstein this last little bit to make a 2.5-inch square, and I'm gonna have to get really scant on my seams. Well, I'm hoping that holds, doesn't create any holes in my block as I put that guy together. If it does, I'll resew that one. And I didn't have, you've seen, I've watched some studies of older quilts. Bonnie Hunter has some antique quilts. Chris is on YouTube, Sew the Distance. She does lessons from an old quilt. And you'll see these quilts from the early 1900s that are, all the blocks are consistent, and then there's just one patch that you can tell they ran out of the fabric they were using for that portion of the block, and they just stuck something else in there. And so I was thinking about doing that, but I couldn't find any fabrics that were that intense teal, that because I don't want to just, throw, like, I wouldn't want to throw this patterned batik into this star with this darker teal. That's too jarring for me. But if I could find a fairly dark, solid teal, I could replace that patch and not have to do the Frankenstein sewing with, to add a 1-inch scrap to make that 2.5-inch square. But sometimes we'll see. We'll see how that comes out. So that's, and this is how my silly mind works. Thinking about if that square doesn't work in the block, then I use the other components, and I could make a scrappy quilt and just, make more unmatched units. And then you'd call it is it the aardvark quilt? No, aardvarks aren't the animal I'm thinking of. It's the platypus that they say is you know, God had all these spare parts laying around and he mashed them together to make an animal and it turned into the platypus. So, you know, so then I would name the quilt the platypus quilt, that with all these mismatched components from other orphan blocks. I'm catching up on chat. Denise was saying the pressing instructions help make the blocks come together. Yeah, I never, it's kind of one of those things you hear. Pressing instructions are either, you know, press to the dark or press open, whatever. And as quilters, we think, oh, I know how to press to the dark, I'm just going to do that. But sometimes it doesn't work for the way the block goes together. So if the designer has given you pressing instructions, it's probably for a good reason. I don't always include them on my finished patterns, but when it makes sense, I will. Okay, and then I need another one of those. And then I realized I'm going to have to show you these fabrics and demonstrate what I'm thinking. I chose fabrics that have subtle stripes. So look at this, like that, you can tell that that dark teal is kind of stripy. And then I, like an idiot, I paired it with this other stripe, the very obvious stripe. So this is going to be a very chaotic block as those star points get turned around all sorts of different ways. But like I said, I cut those units when I was thinking I was going to have more gray in the quilt. And then, as I said, I couldn't find a lot of gray strips. So I went to some other neutrals, and I should have replaced that because I have had critiques of my quilts in the past that they are too chaotic. And but it, you know, in the quilt world, sometimes done is better than perfect. You've heard that saying. So it still will keep somebody warm. Yes, I think that's the True Blue Quilts motto, Jenny, is finished is much better than perfect. I am not a perfectionist when I quilt. And when I teach classes, I tell beginner quilters that everybody has their own level of perfection and what the mistakes they're willing to live with. And your level may be different than mine, and that is perfectly fine. I can teach you how to use a seam ripper when you need to. I've ripped out plenty of seams when things don't meet my standards. But, you know, like I said, we all find that place. I have a friend of mine who her level is much higher. She holds her sewing to a much higher standard than I do. She may have points that don't meet, and she'll rip out long past the time that I would have said good enough. So you get to decide when your project is finished. And I think we are close to finished here because I have two. I was working on my Frankenstein components, so let's see if I can get it in a 4-patch and have it hold together. Press that. And even my Frankenstein, the stripes are going opposite directions. I really hope that, you know, I should have that strobe light warning on this block that it's may induce headaches. Ooh, that's going to be very scary. No, it'll be fine. Quilts hold together with 1/8-inch seams, right? Okay. So here are our 4 egg stars. Like I said, this is the pastel version. It has that light batik, and I have a very lightly speckled cream as the background fabric. So that is 1 block. This was the sample block I finished ahead of time. And then here was the funky version with different purple accent stripes. So that has a much more brown background, but these are going to be the scrappy 4X stars. Okay, and these, I'm calling these jelly stars because I made them all with jelly roll strips. And I showed you at around the 1.5 hour mark, if you're watching the video, the easy angle ruler that I use to make my half square triangles for the star points from strips. So we will, I have plenty of units, you know, three blocks does not make a quilt. It makes a table runner, so you could certainly stop at whatever point you want. I've got fabric cut for 20 squares, so I have quite a ways to go. But I have been talking and sewing for quite a while now this morning, so I am going to leave you to enjoy Jelly Roll Day on your own. If there's interest, I could possibly come back on later tonight, this afternoon. I mean, I'm Pacific time, so it may get into the evening for those of you on the East Coast. It was so fun chatting with all of you in the True Blue crew. And we want to say thank you to Jenny for supporting my harebrained idea. And we'll see if we can get a True Blue crew Paducah invasion going in 2024. So Denise says that would make a good saying on a t-shirt. 3 blocks don't make a quilt, but it does make a table runner. I like that. I think we can come up with that, and we can make that happen. Everybody have a lovely day, and I will see you back here soon for more quilting adventures. Yes, we're going to have a whole collection of True Blue crew t-shirts, so email me your suggestions and we'll keep a list, and they will be coming to a store near you soon. Thanks everybody. Have a great day.